DIYer behind LemonThistle.com. Welcome back. Today we are talking all about Cricut introduction, basic intro to Cricut. This video is going to be in partnership with my friend Alexis from Persialoo. It is one of our Cricut versus Silhouette videos. In this series, we're just both taking on the same topic. I'm taking on Team Cricut, she's taking on Team Silhouette. So if you're interested in the differences, you can watch both videos and make the decision for yourself. So in today's video, I am going over what is a Cricut, what does it do, what do you need to get started, what materials can it cut, is it the same as a printer, what is design space, what designs can you use. I'm just going over all the basics as an introduction, and hopefully by the end of this video you feel confident to take on something with your Cricut or understand what it does, you know. Introduction. Welcome to Cricut. Before we get into it, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would so love if you did that below so you don't miss out on any more DIY or home decor videos. Let's dig in. What I'll do, since this is probably going to be a little bit longer and you might want to jump around and like only look at certain parts of it, is I will put the timestamps down below in the description if you'd like to jump to a certain part, like what is a smart material or something like that. So I'll put those all down in the description so you can jump around if you'd like to. All right, so first up, what is a Cricut? So a Cricut is a personal cutting machine. What does that mean? It's just like a personal printer. It's an at-home cutting machine. So it is different than a printer in that instead of printing ink onto your paper, it will cut out the design that you send to it. It can cut it out of various materials, but yeah, it takes the information that you send to it and it cuts it out. So it's kind of like a craft plotter that you can have at home. So it does this by feeding a mat with the material that you are wanting to cut out through here, and then the blade kind of goes back and forth and it moves the mat forward and back to cut that design out of your material. Now it can cut, but it also can do a couple other things. It can use a pen and it can do the draw function. There are different blades that go in so that you can score or emboss or things like that. So while it is a personal cutter, it can do a couple other things too, but it is not a printer. Now, I think a lot of people think that Cricut has the ability to print because it has a function called print then cut, which I do want to address just kind of right off the bat. It doesn't print ink, but it does function with a printer. So you can print a design and then you can feed it into your Cricut using the print then cut function in Cricut Design Space, and it will cut that design out. I do have a full video about Cricut print then cut. Instead of going into too much detail on that function, I will link that video for you. Okay, so Cricut is a personal cutting machine. What the heck can you make with a personal cutting machine? And is Cricut the only personal cutting machine out there? So with a Cricut or any personal cutting machine, you can make decals, you can make customized t-shirts, you can make cards. There are so many different things that you can make. If it involves cutting a design out of a material, the Cricut is your friend. Here are some of the projects that I have made with my Cricut. Honestly, the sky is the limit. Anything that you want to add a design onto that can either be stuck onto, ironed onto, or cut itself. I mean, you can make so many things with your Cricut, not just greeting cards, wall decals, and paper crafts. So is Cricut the only personal cutting machine that is out there that I would recommend? And while Cricut is the one that I am familiar with and I use and I love, there are other ones. The other one that I see most often is the Silhouette, and my friend Alexis is doing her video about that. So if you're interested in the Silhouette, you can click over there and check out hers. There is also Brother cutting machines, which I haven't used. I actually don't know anybody who uses them, but I do know that they are reviewed pretty well. So there is more than one Cricut here. Yes, there is. And there is actually even a new one. It launches next week as of recording this. The Cricut Maker 3 and the Cricut Explore 3 are both launching next week. And they have a few new perks compared to the older Maker and the older Explorer, mainly that they can cut smart materials like the Cricut Joy, which allows you to cut longer materials. I will talk more about that when we get to smart materials, but just know that there's now new machines. I do have a full video about which machine you should purchase if you are looking at a Cricut. I will link that, so I'm not going to spend time going over the differences between the machines, but know that there's different ones. They all basically do the same thing with some tweaks or different advantages. Like the Cricut Maker, you can sub in different blades, so you can cut things like wood and leather and fabric. And the Cricut Joy here is small, it's tiny, it's portable, and it can cut smart materials, so it can cut up to 75 feet of continuous material, whereas these machines can't do that. But the new Explorer 3 and Maker 3 can. So something to consider. I will link that video so you can hop over and watch that. Okay, so what can they cut? Like I said, the different machines can cut different things. All of them can cut vinyl, paper, cardstock, heat transfer vinyl, or iron-on, depending which brand you're looking at. They're the same thing, really. There is lots of different materials that they can all cut. There's over 200 materials that they can cut, so I'm not going to list them all. But again, the Maker with the interchangeable blades, it's called the adaptive cutting system, can cut many more materials than the other Cricut machines and many more materials than the Silhouette. So I will say that that is one of the perks. It has a rotary blade, so it cuts fabric really well. It can cut deeper materials with the knife blade and heavier materials, even thin wood. So the Maker can cut the most materials, but it can cut anything really that is flat and thin enough that you can feed through on a mat. Okay, so where do these designs come from that it prints? So you can see on the Cricut Explorer, this is a Cricut Explorer Air. There has since been the Cricut Explorer Air 2, and then now the Cricut Explorer 3. The Air just means that it's Bluetooth, and now that Bluetooth is standard, they've dropped the Air, but it does have this cartridge container here. So older Cricuts, there is some, I think the Cricut Expression is an older one that is no longer supported by Cricut, but it had cartridges that you plug in here. So you could only cut the images that were on the cartridges that you purchased. So now Cricut is all wireless, and it uses Cricut Design Space, which is an application that you can download to your device, whether it be your computer, your iPad, your phone, and you can cut from those apps instead. So what that allows you to do is that allows you to cut from their library of images, or it allows you to upload and cut your own images. So I do have a full video about the different types of images that you can cut, how to upload your own images and cut those, and the different file types. I will link that below. It's called How to Cut Any Image Using Your Cricut. But here's a quick overview. So Cricut Design Space is the app that communicates with your Cricut. It's like opening up your printer app if your printer app was combined with like a mini Photoshop. So of course it's not quite as advanced as Photoshop, but it has some of those editing capabilities. So Cricut Design Space also has a library of projects and images that you can use in your own projects. Now, some of these are free, some of these are paid, and some of these are included in Cricut Access. Cricut Access is kind of like a subscription program where you can get extra fonts and images with your subscription. So I do have Cricut Access. I do use it quite a bit. I like the additional fonts that are available, but I will tell you that you can also use your own system fonts and cut your own fonts out. I will also say, and I mentioned this in my How to Cut Any Image with Cricut Design Space, and I think I mentioned it in my video all about fonts as well, that I prefer to do my font work in Photoshop or in Canva and then upload it as a PNG image to Cricut Design Space so that I know my spacing is perfect. So I upload it as an image so it cuts it out all perfectly spaced instead of using the Cricut Design Space function to edit my fonts, because it tends to space it out more than I like and I find it a little bit finicky. That's probably one of the downfalls here. So you can design within Cricut Design Space. And so if you use all Cricut images and fonts, you can actually share those projects as well. So I have several projects that I have created and uploaded a photo for and have shared in Cricut Design Space so that you can make my projects directly from there. Okay, so that's Cricut Access, Cricut Projects, Cricut Images, but you can also upload your own images. Now, if you upload anything of your own for copyright purposes, you can't share it within Cricut Design Space. So if I upload my hand lettering and I cut that out like I've done in this project here, then I can't share that with you in Cricut Design Space, but I can, however, offer it as a free download on my blog, and you can download it and you can upload it to Cricut Design Space yourself and cut it out. Now that design is saved in your Cricut design space so that you can use it again in the future. It is important to note that just because you have a design and you're uploading it, that does not give you rights and copyright to print it and sell it. If you are going to be printing and selling it, just remember that you need to look into copyright for those images. You can absolutely use your Cricut to make products to sell, but the designs that you use, whether it be fonts or images, you need to look into the licensing of those. So just an important disclosure out there. Most free printables are not for commercial use. Okay, so how does it work? And what do I need to make it work? So the Cricut works by being plugged in, so you need a power source, and it works by being wirelessly or Bluetooth connected to your device that is functioning with Cricut Design Space. So you need a device, whether it be a computer, an iPad, a phone, with Cricut Design Space, and you do need to make a Cricut Design Space account to be able to use it. So once those are connected, and walking through your setup is really simple, I will link the Cricut setup below for you. It walks you through. I've never had an issue setting up a machine, and I've set up several machines. All right, I am going to do a separate introduction to Cricut Design Space video. I have that recorded. It just made this video so long. So once that is done and posted, I will link that in the description of this video. In the meantime, here is a very basic walkthrough of Cricut Design Space. When you open it up, you can see all of your projects here, or make a new project. Let's make a new project. You can see in the side panel, you can use an image from the Cricut library. You can also find your own images here. The other place that you can find your own image is by clicking upload, and you can see them below, or you can upload your own here. You can also add fonts, and of course you can edit all of these things, but once you are happy with it, you can click make it. From here, you do need to mirror it if you are using an iron-on material. If you are not, just leave it. You can move designs from mat to mat if you think you can fit more than what Cricut Design Space says that you can fit. And once you are happy with it and you turn on your machine and it connects, then you can select your material. Now, selecting the material will set your Cricut to cut that depth of material, how hard the Cricut has to press, all of that it knows based on these materials. It will also tell you if you need to load different tools or blades into your machine to cut the material that you have selected. Once you have done that, then you need to go to your machine to load your mat and hit go. So Cricut functions by cutting material on mats. So this is a standard mat here. There is different types of mats with different grips. This is the standard, this is the strong grip, this is the light grip, and there is also a fabric mat. And then they come in this size here, or they also come in this 12 by 24 larger mat. Okay, the different mats are used for different things. So the standard mat, the green one, is used for most of your materials like Cricut vinyl, iron-on, that sort of thing. The strong grip mat is used for things like wood or cork or glitter vinyl, the things that are maybe more difficult to get to lay flat and to stick in place as the knife blade or heavier cuts are being made. So the Cricut changes the amount of pressure that it puts on the blade to cut the material depending on which material you're cutting. The light grip mat is great for lighter cardstocks or paper, vellum, things like that might tear when you're trying to peel it off of a stronger grip mat. Because the mat gets fed through by these wheels here, it moves back and forth like this as it cuts. You need to make sure that wherever you place your machine, there is room behind it and in front of it for the entire mat. So it's gonna hit the wall if you put it too close. So I store mine on a rolling tray and I just kind of let it hang down. And that seems to work fine for me. I know a lot of people will put it sideways on a desk so it has the entire desk. If you would turn this way. Whichever, but if you put it too close to the wall like a printer, like a standard printer, it'll come out this way. That's not gonna work for you. You do need to have room behind the Cricut. You can see here, you can see with the mini one here, this is where the mats come out and then go back through. So you do need to have room both in front of it and behind it, unlike a printer. And yes, there's mini mats for the Cricut Joy. Okay, so after you have made your design and you say, make it, you're gonna have to do a couple of things. First, you're gonna need to select which material you're going to want to use. Now, on the Cricut Maker and the Cricut Joy, this is all done on Cricut Design Space. You select your material, it tells this one. The Cricut Explore Air all have this dial. So this dial also has to be set to the right material. In the Cricut Explore 3, they've done away with that dial, so it functions a lot like the Maker in that it's done completely in Design Space. Okay, so loading your mat is what we call it when we put our material on the mat and then load it into the machine. So most every material you put with the material side facing up, and this is the backing paper on the back. So different vinyls, adhesives are usually like this. So you just line it up on the grid and you smooth it down nice and flat and try to get any wrinkles out of it. You have different tools that you can use to help flatten it. This here is a scraper. I'll go over the different tools and accessories that you can get at the end, but I definitely recommend having a scraper. It works really great for this sort of thing to work out all the bubbles. And then you load up your machine by putting it under these guides here and then hitting the load button, which is the arrows. And so that'll pull it in and that will calibrate it and you're good to cut. So then when it starts flashing, you hit cut. Now, this is different if you are using anything iron-on. Anything iron-on like this one here, this is a flocked iron-on material. Flocked iron-on, you're not able to get through Cricut. You have to go through a different supplier. You want to put face down. Anything iron-on, the transfer paper is clear and it's on top of the good side of the material, and you want to put the adhesive side of the material sticking up. Now, because it's going to be backwards, you'll also need to mirror your design. And mirroring your design isn't done in Cricut Design Space. You need to make sure to hit mirror design before you cut out anything iron-on. Now, Cricut Design Space is pretty smart and it will give you a warning. This material requires mirrored design. Have you mirrored your design? So hopefully you don't forget. I have forgotten plenty of times and had to recut many of projects. So you load it up, you hit go, you watch it cut your artwork beautifully, and then when it's done, the arrows will flash, you can unload your machine, and we can get to making our project. So when you are taking your design off of your mat, I suggest flipping it upside down and peeling the mat off of the material and not the other way around. This is less important with something like iron-on vinyl, but very important when it comes to something like paper, because that paper is going to be all curled and nobody wants a curled project. You want your paper nice and flat. So this will keep your material nice and flat. This one has been rolled in storage for a while, as opposed to getting a really curled piece of paper by removing it from your mat like this. Okay, after you have removed your project from the mat, you need to weed. Now, weeding is one of those things that is really basic, but the word confuses some people. So it basically means to pull out all the parts that you don't want in your design. Just like in the garden, you pull out all the weeds that you don't want in your garden. So all of the pieces that you've cut to pull away from your finished designs, you want to pull off. So there are different tools that you can use for that. There's different weeding tools. There's so many different tools that you can use, but I will link them below. I tend to just use the standard weeding tool the most, but there's lots of different tools that you can use to weed. I know some people just like to use tweezers, whatever's your jam. It's just pulling off the material that you don't want transferred into your design. Now, once you have done that, you can cut your backing to size and you can either iron it on. But if you are making a stick-on design, then you'll notice peeling off each individual piece and sticking it on is a pain in the butt. And if it is a complicated design, that's an easy way to wreck your decal, your transfer, your sticker, whatever you want to call it. So we have something called transfer tape. There's lots of different transfer tapes. I actually have a full video about transfer tapes as well, so I'll link that. But basically, transfer tape is a clear or semi-transparent material that you use to pick up your design off the backing and then stick it onto the surface that it will stay on. Then you can peel that back, leaving your decal on the surface. So it's not as sticky as the adhesive on the vinyl, but it's sticky enough to pick it up off the backing and put it where it belongs with everything in place perfectly, no shifting of letters or spacing. Okay, so what do you need to use your Cricut? So again, you need your device that has Cricut Design Space on it. You need electricity to plug it in. You need your machine with a blade. All the machines come with a fine point blade, which is great for vinyl, cardstock, iron-on material, that sort of thing. But again, you can get different blades for different machines, especially for the Cricut Maker. You need a mat, unless you're using a Cricut Joy with Smart Material or the Cricut Maker 3 or Cricut Explore 3 with Smart Material. So a mat and your material. And then if your material requires transfer tape, then you'll need transfer tape. So when you buy a machine, quite often it will come with a small pack of mats, your blade, and I think it usually comes with a weeder and a small scraper like this to smooth out the material like we just did. And sometimes you can get bundles that come with more materials. It is up to you whichever you want to choose. It just depends what you want to make and if you're getting the materials that you want in that. Okay, so different tools that you can get. Cricut has so many different tools. There's all the different mats. There's all the different materials. There's transfer tape. There's all the different weeding tools, tweezers, scrapers, spatulas, scoring stylus, and then there's all the different blades that you can get, and scoring blades, perforating blades, wavy blade, knife blade, rotary blade. I mean, there's lots of different tools that way. I will put a list of all the blades here that you can get for the Cricut Maker. Now, the Cricut Maker does have lots of different blade options with the adaptable cutting system, which is this kind of like wheel that turns it around, and so that's great. You can replace those. But the Cricut Explorer can also have replaceable blades. This is a deep cut blade. There's also bonded fabric blades. There is specific different blades for this as well. But you can use all of these blades in the Cricut Maker. Just something to keep in mind. The Cricut Joy, it has smaller blades, so they are not interchangeable. And then there's all the markers that you can get. So this other spot here on both of the machines, the second spot here, so the A, B is for blade, A is for accessory. So the A is for markers or things like that. So you can get washable markers for marking your patterns on fabric. You can get fine point markers. You can get infusible ink markers. I mean, there's lots of different kinds of Cricut markers that you can get. There's also cutting materials not related to the machine. So you can get like cutting rulers, self-healing cutting mats, X-Acto knives, they call it the True Control knife. There is rotary cutters, there is paper trimmers, there's lots of different accessories that you can get. I mean, none of them are absolutely necessary, but they're all great. I also have the Cricut Bright Pad, which is like a light pad. I believe it's been discontinued, but if you can get your hands on one, they're great. There is also the Cricut Easy Press, which is irons, essentially, like half a heat press, which makes it really easy to make heat transfer projects. So this is the itty bitty one here, but there's 3 to 4 different sizes now. So there is lots of accessories that you could branch out into, but when you're getting started, the ones that you really need are just the mats, a scraper. You can use a credit card though. You honestly don't even need this. And a weeding tool or tweezers. And then scissors. Scissors are always great. I like to use a craft knife instead of scissors a lot of the time, but you can use either. Okay, so you get a blade, you get a mat, you get set up, you get going. How long does that work for? So things like mats will eventually get unsticky, and there's different ways that you can like restick your mat, but Cricut won't warranty if you do anything funky like that. So I just replaced my mat. But that's up to you. Blades like the perforation blade, I have never burned through. I have burned through the fine point blades. They recommend replacing them about once every 6 to 12 months, depending on how often you do projects. My blades have lasted 12 months or more, honestly. And you will notice when it's getting dull because it'll start getting a little bit like it'll grab the vinyl up instead of cutting it nice and clean. And sometimes that just means that you need to clean your blade. And sometimes that means that you need to replace your blade. Now the blades have these housings here, and then the actual blade just pops right out. So it's easy to replace that. You don't have to buy a whole new blade and housing. So the same with these ones here. They pop right off and then you can replace it. Okay, so back to talking about materials. Now, I get asked quite often if you have to use Cricut brand materials with your Cricut. I do because I work with Cricut quite often. And so I know how their materials work, but there's tons of other materials out there. I really like the paper transfer tape from Expressions Vinyl. I really like the flocked iron-on material, which again, you can't get through Cricut. So I ordered that through Expressions Vinyl. You can get patterned iron-on. There's so many different types of iron-on and vinyl that you can get out there. Oracle is really great for adhesive vinyl. They have lots of different options, including permanent vinyl. There is Sizer, I believe that's how you say it. Sizer iron-on material is really great for making shirts and things like that. And the Cricut infusible ink or sublimation ink is a really wonderful product, but Cricut will work with anything. You can put your printer paper in here. You can go to Michael's and just buy craft wood in the right thickness and put it in here. You can get any kind of iron-on vinyl or adhesive vinyl and put it on their mat and send it through. The Smart Material is a newer product from Cricut, and Smart Material allows you to cut without a mat. And the first machine to do that was the Cricut Joy here. So let me show you that. So this is Smart Material here for the Cricut Joy. And like I said, the newer machines that are coming out next week, the Cricut Maker 3 and the Cricut Explorer 3 have larger Smart Material too. So Smart Material just allows you to cut without a mat. That's really the biggest difference. So you can see here it is perfectly sized and it has a stiffer backing, so the backing itself kind of works as the mat. Now, one thing to note about this is where I could normally only cut 2 feet of material using a mat on my Cricut Maker, you can cut up to 75 long if you get the longer pieces of Smart Material without a mat. So it'll just keep continuously cutting, it'll just keep going. So Smart Material, of course, you would have to use the Cricut brand to go with the Cricut Smart Material cutting function. And you have to select Smart Material cutting without a mat. When you are on Cricut Design Space, it'll prompt you and ask if you're using a mat, if you're using Smart Material, whichever. One other thing that I do want to point out is when you are cutting thicker materials, beyond replacing the blade with the proper blade for your material, and Cricut Design Space will again prompt you to change the blade to whichever one is recommended. But these here are called the star wheels, and it's suggested that you move those to the side for things like leather and wood. And so that just avoids putting any indentations into your material. These star wheels are used to help feed the material through, but the thicker materials kind of touch this feeder bar here and they don't need those star wheels, so then they don't leave the little indents on those thicker materials. Okay, I think that I have covered everything that I wanted to talk to you about in this introduction video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more DIY or home decor videos. And if you haven't already, you can hit that notification bell to be notified about new videos. So I know that this video was packed full, but I'm sure that I missed something, so if you have any other questions, you can pop those in the comments below and I will do my best to answer for you. I also have a bunch of other Cricut videos and blog posts. I will put all of those in the description box below, but there are so many things that you can do with a Cricut. It really is so much fun, and it's impossible to cover them all in one video. I'm also going to work on writing this into a blog post. This is a lot of information, so I will be working on that, and when it's ready, I will link that in the comments below as well. It will be a big resource. It will have everything that you need and links to all of the things that we are talking about. If you would like to learn about the silhouette in this same style of video, my friend Alexis has a video that went live today as well. I will link that for you here.